You're listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast brought to you by DraftKings, America's #1 sportsbook app. With John Schuster, I'm Mike Luke. All right, we've got a lot of comments to get to here. But, man, Schuster, I was thinking about this when it became closer to appearing that Arizona might actually win this game. This is the biggest win in as long as I can remember for Arizona football for a variety of reasons. First of all, you knocked off a top 10 team. Second of all, this is, I don't want to say that it's the vindication of the Jedd Fisch era because, again, it's early on, but this really goes to show you where we're at right now. And I think what Jedd Fisch is going for, this was a big, big time win.
It certainly is, and it helps if Arizona can build on it. And the schedule allows for that possibility. The Cats may be, if things go well, and it's going to be difficult for Arizona to bounce back to try to see if that momentum works for them, but they may have a little bit more in this season than we anticipated. The way that things are going, they may be able to backdoor into some things. Obviously, the most significant win of this regime's era, and it was spirited. And I think one of the things it says about year two is, and this is something that in roundabout ways we've talked about. Last year's Arizona team, the Kevin Sumlin Arizona teams, were, I think the phrase you noted to some degree, is some variation of basically on-field bye weeks. And as Arizona was struggling and has struggled, they struggled significantly just last week. You were hoping that Arizona wasn't going to slip into that aspect. But I think the improvement element here is that, Arizona's a team that is in the bottom half of the conference on a consistent basis week in and week out in year two. And there's still a lot of work to do, but you can't take them lightly. And Arizona was very spirited and indicated that teams like this have an opportunity to play close. And if you play close, you have a chance to win. Heck of a performance for the Cats. And there were a number of occasions where Arizona could have gotten demoralized. But but they did a really good job defensively of keeping UCLA off balance enough. And, obviously got an immense win that turns this conference topsy-turvy on a day where, we shouldn't be surprised in mid-November this happens in this conference pretty much all the time. But Arizona plays its role in being a spoiler and getting a obviously significant W in LA.
All right, let's talk about the defense first because we're going to talk about the offense a lot. The defense, to me, took a huge step forward in this game. Again, Jedd Fisch talked about how this week that he was going to start playing a lot of the young guys, that he was going to start playing multiple freshmen on the D line, whether that was Deuce Davis, whether that was Sterling Lane, whether that was Uiagalelei, whether that was obviously Jacob Manu in the linebacker spot, Prysock, Davis, you name it, in the secondary, and you saw that out there again. This was a defense that I thought made some real big plays out there. 8 tackles for loss. We haven't seen that in a long time from an Arizona defense. And again, against a UCLA offense that with Chip Kelly certainly, has looked the part. I got to give them a lot of credit right here because, again, this wasn't this was a defense that was playing a lot of guys that held their own against one of the better offenses in the country, Shu.
And I think more than held their own. In the end, this is a good performance. Now, I think as much as anything, and one thing that may be overlooked here because rightfully a lot of the younger players coming in on defense. And by the way, credit to the folks in this post-game podcast who have commented as well about that aspect and maybe wanting to look at moving in that direction. You want to talk about a little internal vindication. You could make a case for that as well. So well done from an observation standpoint for the folks who watch this on a regular basis. But I think Arizona's scouting of UCLA was very good tonight.
Right.
And that's an aspect in addition to getting a lot of new faces in the game. That also played a role in making things a little bit difficult and just keeping UCLA off balance enough in this matchup. They made enough plays and did a real good job of putting difficult potential momentum-changing situations behind them. And that's not always an easy thing to do. And it's especially difficult when you've lost multiple games in a row. And Arizona kept its head up and managed to get a huge W.
William,
Yeah, I think the defense admirable, and what I really like that they did, and maybe some of the blame goes to Chip Kelly, but due to some early down success, there were times when UCLA was forced to go to the air and get away from what was working, which was Charbonneau on the ground, and then of course DTR keeping it. So once you got them out of being able to just grind out the run, and granted, he still had over 220 yards in total offense, but they were never able to just continuously wear down the Arizona defense. Right. And, I mean, you look at the score, they held them to 7 under their season average, but I think they held them to like 100 yards under their season average. And maybe by the end it was close because of the length of that drive. But for the most part, the defense did what they needed to do for Arizona to win. And that's the key. I mean, I know people will go back and they're going to hearken to the days of the Desert Swarm. Well, that brand of college football is gone, guys. You basically have to try to outscore your opponent. And Arizona's defense, as you said, Mike and Chu, they took away those opportunities to change momentum, and they made just enough big plays when they needed to. And conversely, Jedd Fisch was aggressive enough with the offense and successful enough that they just kept UCLA on their heels. UCLA was never able to build up a big lead. Even they finally got the lead from Arizona after Arizona was up, 14-0 and 21-14. But they never got that 2-score lead. They never got a full touchdown lead, if I remember correctly.
I think that's correct, yeah.
And that was the key. Arizona never had to truly play from behind. And yes, they were down, but it was never a 2-score game. It was never you have to match touchdown with touchdown. And that was key for Arizona. That was the key for the defense.
This was also a game, guys, where Arizona in the past could have wilted, especially when UCLA got up. It always seems like Arizona either fumbles or there's some weird thing that happens. And I'm not just talking this team, I'm talking historically. But every time UCLA made a big play shoe, Arizona was able to answer the bell. And a big part of that, we're going to get back to the defense here in a second, but this offense, while it can be frustrating because they're not good in short yardage situations, and de Laura certainly takes some sacks that he shouldn't take, but man, this team has a real explosive ability to it, and that's explosiveness against anybody. When you look at McMillan, when you look at Cowing, who I think our guy Anthony Gimino said, when Cowing catches the ball, it's almost like he's Trung candidate, in that he's not necessarily going to make a guy miss, but he's going to find that hole and he's going there immediately. Singer as well, Tanner McLaughlin. This is an offense, especially because of how young it is. This is an offense that's going to be problems for teams for the foreseeable future.
And it's obviously a nice place to be. Arizona still is, I think, inconsistent offensively. And if they can fix some things, and hopefully into next year, those are things that, experience and a little bit of maturity helps with. But in tonight's performance, de Laura was outstanding. When he has time or when he can figure out the right play, what was it, 21-27 for 3 touchdowns and 311, 315, somewhere in that neighborhood. Excellent numbers. And he was able to make some immense plays that got Arizona in position to get a huge W. And consider how bad they looked last night, rather last week. How disinterested they looked, how defeated they looked, how they just didn't appear to, got smacked around a little bit and just kind of looked like they wanted to go home. So whatever happened between last week and this week was, at least in the short term, pretty inspiring. And it puts Arizona potentially in an interesting position to try to utilize the momentum from this game to see what they can do against a Washington State team in Tucson that I think is better than them and more talented than them, but certainly beatable. And then you have the rivalry game at the end of the year, and Arizona can absolutely win that game. Start talking in a little different tune if Arizona is a team that won 3 games at the end of the season heading into year 3 of the Jedd Fisch era. That's a good selling point as Arizona tries to improve in the offseason with the recruiting that's still necessary.
Well, and see, that's the part that's exciting to me about this is that how many times this year, and again, how many times in the past have we watched an Arizona team and we said, all right, well, they look overmatched, or you need everything to go right. Now, granted, Arizona's had some real clunker games this year, whether that's against Utah, whether that's against Cal, but the talent level here against let's just say UCLA, for example, which is a top 10 team. If you didn't know anything about either one of these teams and you just looked at the players, you wouldn't think that UCLA has that much more talent than Arizona. And I think that's what's exciting about this right now, guys.
Yeah, you look at it, and Arizona was able to not only go toe-to-toe for the most part, but survive some injuries. If I'm not mistaken, Jordan Morgan didn't return to the game.
Correct.
So they were playing with essentially two backup offensive linemen. Mo was not on the two deep early in the year, and he's played admirable. You throw in with the fact that I think Jalen Harris went down 2 or 3 times, kept coming back. So Arizona not only was able to look comparable talent-wise, but was able to do it with, some backup players in the game at times. I want to go back to de Laura because I kind of had an epiphany tonight.
What's that?
I yelled at my TV when he took the sack that kind of put him out of field goal range, and I realized he's going to do that twice a game.
Correct.
Let's set the number at 2. If it's 2 or less, I'm fine with it.
Right.
If it's 3 or more, then I'm upset. But the fact that he's going to make more plays than he's going to give up bad sacks, I think is at the point where it's just the trade-off. You can accept 2 bad sacks a game. Now, if he had done that in the fourth quarter when you need a field goal, no. But, I'll take that because he basically got Arizona, I think, about 17 points at least by making plays where he probably should have thrown the ball away. And I think the difference between him and Khalil Tate.
Let me ask you this, Brad.
Sacks and quit making big plays.
Don't you think, though, with de Laura, that that's part of the charm of who he is? You pick up one side of the stick, you pick up the other, and that, because I agree entirely with what you're saying. He's going to have a couple really bad sacks, but man, does he make some plays out there, especially when he's extending it with his legs.
Again, I came to the point where now I just have to accept it's going to happen twice.
Right.
That's where I'm at, he, again, and I know I bring up the Chiefs a lot. He does some things that Mahomes does with the legs, keeping plays alive, good and bad. He's a very different thrower and things like that, but you just have to accept that with him, he's not going to throw the ball away. And he's going to take back, but I can live with that if he's making 3 or 4 big plays a game. And again, we talk about after Magic October with Khalil Tate when he would do some of the same things, except he wouldn't run. He'd run out of bounds. He'd take the bad sack. We've said other quarterbacks take the bad sack without the upside plays. We have to accept the fact that, yes, we're going to get 2 bad. We're probably going to get a bad pick per game. But you're going to get, as long as your positive plays outweigh the negative, and by 2 or 3, then you're in good shape. And tonight, Arizona doesn't score at least 3 of their scores if Jayden de Laura doesn't make plays like that. He also had that one run where, he didn't get the full whatever he needed to get 22, but he got 17.
Right.
And then put them in position to convert. So I'm going to take that. And again, now I'm just going to be like, okay, that's just Jayden being Jayden, and we can accept that. And look at, if you want to see what it means to him, look at what he was doing. He was in tears at the end of that game of happiness because, he battled. He was a warrior. Wiley was a warrior. Again, if you catch me at during the bowl game, I guess now it will be the next time you're out at Tap and Bottle for an Arizona football game. Just tell me if I yell at the TV to shut up, Brad. You already said that you can do that twice.
Have I told you guys about the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX?
Not in 20 hours.
What about you, John Schuster? Have you heard about the DraftKings Sportsbook app, code word PHNX?
Incredibly, I haven't, but I'm old and my ears.
I see the Mountain Mike's on there, by the way. We're going to get to Mountain Mike's here in a second. Here's the deal. All right. New customers can bet on any NBA game, money line. You put down $5 and you can get $200 if your team wins. Now, you can also boost your winnings up to 100% with the DraftKings stepped up same game parlays. It's simple. You download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. What's the code word, everybody out there? PHNX. Code word PHNX. All right. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. I told you all before the year that I liked the over. I was backing the A of over 2.5. And you know what? Even if it hit 3, you should have backed the A. Our guy NPOB in there as well. Backed the A, put his money where his mouth was. And again, code word PHNX. See the show notes for or link description. Sorry, I'm super excited right now. I'm all over the place. And one thing that I also got to tell you about real quick, OGs. All right, here's the deal. There's breaking contract news with OGs. OGs has agreed to a deal. Terms of the agreement were not disclosed at the time, but both sides are very, very excited about what we're doing here. And we're excited to create more great content going forward. And as always, here's the deal. You can find all of the best things at your local dispensary. You must be 21 and up. Indicas, sativas, your taste, you've got it. I got some OGs when I was up in Phoenix this past week. Some people call John Schuster and Brad Alice the OGs of Tucson sports radio. I thought that was really good, by the way. But you know what? As much as people like the OGs, they also like the OGs that come in the indica or the sativa flavor. So check it out again. OGs. All right. I thought that was actually pretty good. All right. Now let's get back to the game on the field right here. Again, guys, calm me down here a little bit, but this win just felt there's been wins, and I wanted to ask you guys about this from a historical perspective. Whether that was Tomey, whoever it was, whether that was Pop McHale for Shoe, has there been a win that you think and you're like, man, that was really a breakthrough moment? Because again, I'm not saying that Arizona is going to go on to win the Rose Bowl, but this felt like kind of a breakthrough win for the Jedd Fisch era.
Well, that Texas Western W in 1963 was certainly a big deal.
I thought the win over the YMCA in 08. huge.
Yeah. Still ranks very high. I think this is an in a box, nice, obviously really good W for Arizona. Fisch is not the first new coach in an Arizona program who's had a big win, pulling off an upset that we didn't really expect to happen. That or certainly was out of the realm of possibilities. Arizona is capable and has been capable, and lots of football teams are, of playing a little bit over their heads and catching a team perhaps a little flat. I don't like saying that because it sounds like I'm undervaluing Arizona, which is not the intent of that. Arizona, the fact that Arizona played as spirited as it did and as well as it did tonight is a testament to Arizona. And even if the team across from them didn't play its A game, that's not Arizona's problem. That's the other team's problem. So what Arizona did tonight was excellent. And clearly, it's the best win in this era, and hopefully a catapult for a number of other big-time wins as this program continues to build. But, you know, is Arizona a team that has made the huge leap 1 week after looking dreadful? Or is Arizona a team that has better talent this year and had one game where it played above its head? But I'm not sure that we're going to. I think it's possible. And hopefully it's something that 6 games from now we look back, hey, Arizona strung some things together. They're making a heck of a lot of progress. I remember saying, Mike, you and I talked about this on a number of occasions, that there's this inclination of breaking the improvement process into seasons. It's simple. Year 1 is better than year 2 is better than year 3, you know, or rather the other way around. Year 3, of course, is better than year 2, year 1, etc. You hope to have a program that's competitive by year 4, year 5, whatever the thing happens to be. And then you're on track and, you know, maybe you can make things roll. But I'm sometimes a believer and was hoping to see that at some point this year, that Arizona is a team that was going to improve and make notable jumps at some time during the course of year 2 that hopefully allowed us to feel good about where this team was progressing heading into the other year. And I think they've done that in 2 of the last 3 weeks, coincidentally against the Los Angeles schools. Obviously, winning today on the road is the high point of that. But they played USC very well, And in between that, they played like crap against a Utah team that kicked them all over the place. So, are we talking next week about an Arizona team that still isn't particularly consistent and is still young, and a Washington State team that has more talent than they do comes into here and beats them? That's certainly a possibility. And then maybe it takes a little bit of the luster off of the UCLA win. So I don't know. I'm not as clairvoyant as you and Brad. You guys are much better. I'm Sherman with the Wayback Machine. You guys are the Jetsons. So I thoroughly expect you to have a pretty good idea of how this is going to play out within the next year. Obviously, it's great to feel good tonight, and it seems like you can see improvement in Arizona, and that's what all of this is about. Hopefully, this is the type of game, and they can build on it and get another W or two. And if that happens, you obviously like where year 2 is, and then it's easier to recruit, hopefully, in the off season.
Well, let's just look at it where we let's just look at it from this stage at last year at this point. And back the A, Ray, great name. Matt, we do deserve this win, by the way. Arizona at this point last year is coming off a 20-game losing streak. And let's be honest here, as bad as some of the Makovic teams were, as bad as some of the Sumlin teams were, I thought last year's team was probably the worst in school history because, first of all, they couldn't score, and defensively, they weren't good either. There's a reason they lost 20 straight games. This year's team, and I've been saying this for a while now, no matter the struggles that they've had against a Cal or a Utah, would beat the living snot out of last year's team by a massive margin. And I think that's what you're looking for when you're looking at improvement there is, all right, how much better are you than you were the previous year? Again, if you were to, this year's team, I think would beat last year's team probably 42-14, something like that. And Brad, am I getting ahead of myself right there? Where do you think?
I don't disagree that this year's team is better than last year's team. I think last year's team did show us some flashes of competence. Going into the ironically enough, the fourth quarter of the UCLA game, going into the fourth quarter against Oregon, what they did with Utah. Where I'm interested to see, one of two things is at play here, and we'll know next week. Was Utah a sign of inconsistency? Was Utah just a bad matchup?
That's what I think.
Because if you look at it, as bad as that Cal game was, Arizona was still within a play of that game. As bad as they were at times against Oregon, that was still hinged on one or two possessions. Even Washington. And, Arizona makes a stop in the fourth quarter or any point at the game. But we saw a team that was clearly inferior to USC find a way to be within a possession late. We can talk about the Jerry Roberts penalty. And even, but we knew Utah was a bad matchup.
Right.
The fact that they were in the game last year with Utah to me is a miracle. So now I think, to me, the big kind of, and it's an elimination game anyways, is this Washington State game. Because last year, with, ironically enough, Jayden de Laura, Washington State blew the doors off Arizona. That might have been their worst game last year.
Right.
So now, can they, at home, a week after, I think Washington State got bowl eligible today.
That's correct.
So it's not as important to Washington State as it is to Arizona. Arizona is basically in a 2-game playoff to get into a lower tier bowl game. And that's about.
Can I ask you guys this? Let me ask you guys both.
That's what we said, Mike. Let's get one more point, and then you can have it.
Of course.
When we did these pregame Tuesday chats, what did I say? If everything goes right, Arizona should go into those final two, or could go in those final 2 games playing for a bowl game, and they're there.
Is this team, before the year, when we were just talking about it, and Shu, you kind of from an outsider perspective, Brad, you a little bit from more of an insider perspective, is this team better than you thought they would be? About the same? Where is this team just when you were looking at expectations, your expectations going into this season, both of you guys?
They're better on offense. They're not better on defense. Today they played a good defensive performance. They put in a lot of young players, and those young players delivered very well. Again, I thought the scouting tonight was very good, and maybe offensively UCLA was not at its best. But this is an Arizona team that we've been talking about for the last 5 or 6 weeks that's given up regularly 500 and 600 yards a game and can't make stops on third down and gives up yards after contact and can't get off the field and all the stuff that we've been talking about Arizona defensively constantly. So the Cats put in one good defensive performance in 6 weeks, and we're anointing them pillars of awesomeness. So I don't know. This may have been the outlier. Now, I expect, and that's great that they were good today, but we've all talked about how Arizona on the defensive end is behind where they are on the offensive end. The coaching staff did an extraordinary job bringing in excellent talent in the offseason. Can they do that on the defensive end with recruiting next year? If they can, this is a team that makes a leap. But despite the difference, generally speaking, is if you were ranking teams in the Pac-12 last year, Arizona is clearly 12th. Mm-hmm. We all get it. We all understand. This year, Colorado is clearly 12th. So Arizona was where Colorado is this year. Bad, all but guaranteed win against other teams in the conference. Now, you have a bunch of teams in this league that have talent and are pretty good. And some of them are really good. Arizona beat a really good team tonight. But Arizona has put itself in position where it's competitive. But the reality is that competitive makes them what? 9th in the conference? They're better than Colorado. They're probably better than Stanford. They lost to California, but maybe if they had a rematch now, they win that game. Catch Oregon State on the right day, maybe, but Oregon State 7-3. So even so, Arizona's still clearly in the bottom half of this league, even by virtue of today's performance. So, there's obviously a lot of work to do, but there's clearly, this is the reward for Arizona moving in the right direction, and it rightfully feels very good. The interesting, difficult thing that I think the coaching staff now has to deal with is this weird publicity aspect where Arizona got a big W. Now, can they build on that, or is it going to go to their head? That's the next learning phase with the talent that they have. Can they learn how to win consistently? And they have 2 game opportunities to do it, and they get those opportunities in front of whatever home crowd there is. It's a nice position to be in. They're right to feel good tonight by virtue of this victory. But now we find out whether this is a huge win that propelled the program or if it was a one-off.
My guy Mike Lowry said it's 11:30 in LA. Where is Woodman? I would assume Kevin has been asleep since about 6 p.m., but when Kevin gets up, Kevin will watch this game, but I assume Kevin went to bed pretty early.
Well, is Kevin gearing up for that NFL game in Germany tomorrow?
I was going to say Kevin will be up very early. I can definitely guarantee you that. I'm going to disagree with Shu here a little bit here. And that going into the year, I thought, last year you won 1 game, Arizona did, off a 20-game losing streak. This year, the over-under was 2.5 wins. Arizona's at 4 now. I think they have an excellent chance to finish. I think they're probably going to split. I don't know who they're going to win or who they're going to beat, but I think they're going to split. If you were to tell me before the year, and I wouldn't care how it happened, that Arizona was going to win 5 games, I would consider that a massive step up. Now, granted, Shu's points are very well taken about the defense not being good, but wins are wins kind of at this stage of the game. And if you were to tell me that Arizona was going to get 5 wins, to me, that would be a massive improvement and something that I would jump at every day of the week.
The way I look at it, Mike, is that, and again, we talked a lot about projections. I think that was your go-to question over the summer when we're filling time.
Right.
And we talked about a lot. And I thought this was, a 3 to 5 win team who, if a lot of things broke right, could flirt with 6 or 7. But in reality, I thought this was probably more than likely a 3 or 4 win team. I hope for 5. So they've kind of hit that. Now, offensively, they're better than I thought. Defensively, they're worse than I thought. And I thought if they were going to be at 4 wins now, more than likely they were beating Cal. They were losing to UCLA. Although I think when we said we were picking games that they might be able to pick one of these 4 off, we thought UCLA was the team. Although I hated the fact the game was in the Rose Bowl.
Right.
But we said if you can survive this middle portion of the season and get into the last 2 games with a chance at a bowl, I think that was a successful season, and they've hit that. Again, they've got a Washington State team. I think this is a fascinating game because while I do think they're better than Arizona, it's not that big a talent difference. It's there. And it's the de Laura kind of revenge game. I mean,
It really is.
they basically forced him out to go with the kid from, what is it?
Incarnate
Immaculate
Word. I almost
Heart
said
or-
Immaculate
yeah.
Heart, but that's a high school on the north side of Tucson.
I think there is a college, Immaculate Heart. I think one of Luke's guys coaches there. Maybe that is Incarnate Word though. And then you've got the rivalry game. So yeah, it's fascinating. But I think this is a great measuring stick game. I think if Arizona goes in and even competes against Washington State, I think this is a slight corner turn. And if they go in and lose by 17, and again, they've not played Washington State well in several seasons, then maybe this is maybe the guy, and I don't know if it's a joke or not, who said they're looking ahead, UCLA. It's that Chip Kelly game that he always seems to have. Okay. So we'll know a lot more about this team after Washington State.
John Schuster, what do you drink? What is the cup that you have right there? If you don't mind me asking.
It looks very plastic.
What is the brand on there? Is that a Mountain Mike's by any chance?
Seems to be a new pizza place in town. Pizza the way it ought to be, Mike.
All right. Well, let me tell you about that pizza place because Anthony Humbert can attest to this as well, as can Jamari Joyner's mother, who came to join us as well. Mountain Mike's Pizza. This is what the world's taking. It's taking over the Southwest, certainly in Tucson. Oracle and Wetmore. They have great pepperoni pizza. It's got a little bit of a curl to it. It's quite good. But it's at all the tap and bottle watch parties. Everybody there was consuming it tonight. Check it out on Oracle and Wetmore. It's open now. All kinds of good stuff. Great place to go watch games. And again, really good pizza. Good deep dish pizza. I like deep dish pizza. So again, check it out. Mountain Bikes. And I mentioned Tap and Bottle. Tap and Bottle. We're there for all the away game watch parties. You name it, we're there. We live there. Tap and Bottle downtown. Scott and Rebecca do great work down there. Now, the next thing about it is you've got the Four Peaks. You've got Four Peaks brew. I consumed 2 glasses of Four Peaks brew. Now, some people get the Four Peaks a little bit confused with Azulis Tabellis, Umar Ballo, Henry Vasar, and Dylan Anderson. I'm sorry. But that's the original. This is the original Four Peaks. You can check it out at their Tempe location where you got all kinds of stuff going on. You got watch parties, you got deals, and you can come down here to Tap and Bottle and you'll have it down here as well.
Did you have a preferred style of beer in the Four Peaks catalog, Mike Luke?
I did. It's the I almost said summer. It's the something I can't remember because I kept asking him what it was again, but it's very good. That's not probably the best read for me because I can't remember which one it was, but it was very good. I will get that next time though. Four Peaks, very good.
Mike, I will say this. I am so much a bigger fan of the Four Peaks reference for the not only the Ric Flair Four Horsemen, but the Four Peaks being the 4 big men, than I am of the Crete and the KO. Like let's take those jokes, put those in the past, give me bad singing and give me Four Peaks, give me a little bit of Swedish pinball, and I'm good.
Swedish pinball is good. That's John Schuster.
Yeah, I'm good with those. So if Shu has to write your material for you, I'm fine. Because and God bless him, there's the guy who tells me he's going to break news every week, and it's the fact that Arizona has a game that day, and the fact that KO is up for every job opening. Maybe I'm old and grouchy. Maybe I'm going to walk in the bar, walk right back out, and yell at a cloud. But I'm ready for some new material, Mike, and I think referencing those 4 big men every time you mention a sponsor, it's not too bad.
The Four Peaks, again, the Tommy gun, you name it, the Swedish pinball, everything. We've got it right here. Mike Lowry, our good friend Mike Lowry is reporting that Lev said Jordan Morgan will be fine. That's big news because Jordan Morgan is their best offensive lineman. That is obviously very good news. All right, let's get back to the defensive line here for a minute. because again, I thought that this was their performance of the year. Now, again, they played really well against San Diego State, but come to find out, San Diego State sucks. So UCLA does not suck. They've had some really good wins this year on the season, and they're most likely a top 15, top 20 team when it's all said and done. And Arizona, again, when you get 3 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, they made things uncomfortable there for UCLA, and that's not something that I envisioned happening, to be honest with you.
I kind of think that's perhaps defensively, and you touched about on this at the top, maybe the most interesting thing, in addition to, again, what I think behind the scenes was a very good scouting plan. But you know, you're in a situation where you know, Arizona putting pressure on the quarterback is an unusual thing. And as a result, you've seen the opposition quarterback. I'll cover for you guys while you're reading.
I'm taking a picture of this. This is fantastic.
As a result, in this conference, there are a lot of good quarterbacks, and those quarterbacks have put up big yardage against Arizona because they have time to do it. So Arizona being able to get a little pressure in there with this lineup and this approach is obviously a very nice thing to see. Whether they can build on it, hopefully this becomes a regular thing.
Hey, William? I don't know if you noticed this, but there were several times, and a lot on the last drive, where the Arizona pass rushers were pancaked by the UCLA. But did you notice they also walled off DTR?
They really did.
Even though they did not get within 2 or 3 yards of him, they made it difficult for him to step up into the pocket and run. He was going to have to do the long curl like Jayden did. But I thought that was very interesting. And I don't know if that was by design. Like, okay, if you can't get to him, let him pancake you and just don't let him run by you. Or was it just happenstance? But I'd be very interested to find that out. And to go back to the 3 Kevins, not the 4 Peaks. Shoot, do you remember the movie from the 90s? It was terrible, but it was the Tao of Steve.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I do.
Do we now have a Tao of the Kevins?
Apparently we do. The triumvirate of excellence. Excellence is a very loose definition.
Who can consume more 4 Peaks in one sitting, do you think? The great Kevin O'Neill, Kevin Sumlin, or our very good pal Kevin Woodman?
Oh, O'Neill.
I agree. I think it's O'Neill by a mile.
Woodman's got the weight advantage, but O'Neill's got the decades of...
Someone would be sloppy and passed out after 3 or 4 drinks. Those two would be able to drink for quite a while.
Oh, but my goodness, Woodman and O'Neill at the same location at the same time, trying to challenge each other in that. That would be phenomenal. That'd be a PPV event.
I do want to talk about a couple things that do frustrate me, though, and I put this out there. And again, this was an A performance, so put it to you any way you want. But my big one thing that really does bother me, though, is when Arizona in the short field is just not good. When they get the ball around the 5 to the 7 yard line, looking to score, they're generally going backwards, or they're generally throwing some kind of desperation thing. They do not look comfortable at all in those situations, guys.
Because they're still trying to figure out what to do with their offensive line, which isn't as ultimately as advanced as it needs to be, and they don't have a power running back. And the thing that they need to do beyond that is... I think the one McMillan to me is the one guy who gives them an opportunity to score in short yardage. And when those opportunities present themselves, it's probably something that maybe they could try to look at a little more. But the reality is that on the offensive end, that's not something that's going to have to be dealt with. But another reality is, and I think we don't necessarily look at this, it's very much a microcosm issue, but it's commonplace throughout college football, is that I think there are a lot of teams that are anywhere from pretty good to competitive who struggle in the red zone. And they all struggle in the red zone for pretty much the same reason. You have a lot of receivers. You have some good quarterbacks. You have some iffy offensive linemen because those are a little bit more difficult to find. And a power running game isn't something that works on a consistent basis or isn't in favor on a consistent basis at the college level. So the problem that Arizona has, while it's frustrating, is not anathema to the rest of the conference with comparable teams and even the rest of the country in college football. Do you want to improve on it? Of course you do. It helps a long way to do that. And Arizona is, I think, going to hopefully look into that as trying to make that as much a priority as possible. Again, to their credit, the ability with to improve with the skill players they have has obviously been excellent, and that's another step as far as an overall evolution is concerned on the offensive end.
Brad, you were invited to a concert, correct, by one Mr. John Schuster in the last couple days?
I was, yes.
Okay. Let's just say, though, that John Schuster didn't invite you, and you said, you know what, Tyler, Brad's kid, let's go to a concert. But you said, oh, darn it, the concert's about to start, or whatever the case may be, I don't have tickets. You know what you would do? You would go to Game Time, America's #1 ticketing app. You would go onto Game Time, go onto the website, and you would get, not only would you be able to get tickets last second, you would also be able to get them for probably about 60% off. So if you wanted to go see Queensryche, if you wanted to go see the Four Peaks play in person, if you wanted to see the Swedish pinball, you would probably go to Game Time. And not only that, you would save money in the process. So check out the show notes. If you want to help us out, buy your tickets through the link in the description. But again, Brad, if you wanted to go to Queensryche, you should have probably checked out Game Time. Yeah,
I think it's safe to say that Brad, when it comes to sometimes spontaneity, likes to walk the thin line. And, sometimes it works in his favor and sometimes it just doesn't.
All right, guys. Now, let's look ahead here a little bit.
He's also got another thing coming.
Let's look ahead. Washington State, Arizona State.
Hey, but using Game Time, the prices are great, but you're not breaking the law. Shoot.
You're not breaking the law. Washington State, Arizona State here.
If Arizona, two of us.
Right. If Arizona can win one of these two games, you'd have 5 wins on the season, to me, which again would be a massive boost. And after watching ASU today, ASU sucks. Sorry, Jacob Franklin, but they're not very good. Arizona can win that game. And you know what? I think Arizona can beat Washington State. I'm not saying they will, but Arizona can do that. What do you guys think?
They're both winnable. They're both losable.
Yes.
I would put
yes, Jacob.
I think I think Arizona's got a 45-55 chance of beating Washington State and maybe 60-40 to beat ASU. So being in one of those situations where you're 1-1 it's not a bad position to be at the end of the year. But if they have a good week in practice and take advantage of what they were able to do today, closing out the season at 6-6 is certainly a plausible scenario. And then there are a lot of fans rightfully feeling good about what this team was able to do down the stretch. It's not easy. Brad had noted, and I think you talked about this a little bit as well, how frustrating Washington State is. Washington State has better talent than Arizona, but Arizona now has a little bit of confidence that maybe they didn't have before.
But does ASU have better talent than Arizona?
I don't know. I think ASU is a little bit better than I expected them to be, even though their overall record is probably about right. But in a different way, they're not dissimilar to Arizona. Except I think they're a little bit better or more consistent defensively than they are offensively, where Arizona's clearly more advanced on the offensive end than on the defensive end at this stage. But you look at their general resumes, they're not that far off. Arizona plays relatively competitive games, but usually doesn't get a W. ASU plays relatively competitive games, doesn't get a W. They hang around, but they both got marquee wins. I think it was ASU who beat Washington, and obviously Arizona knocks off UCLA.
But wouldn't you say the power of backing the A is probably more prevalent for Arizona right now than it is ASU?
Well, I think you're certainly not backing the A at ASU. You're obviously backing the A at Arizona with Brad's little very impressive jacket. He's showing the branding here with your very impressive hat. With your neon sign in the background and even an old jersey up here for good measure. Even Columbo's back in the A. So
Columbo does back the A.
Yeah. Columbo ain't back in ASU right now. You know, it is an interesting dynamic between the two, and to a large degree, I don't expect Arizona to make the same. Arizona, the team, Arizona, the coaching staff, to make the same faux pas that we're doing right now. We're talking about ASU briefly while we ought to be focusing on Washington State. If Arizona does that, they're stupid because they're not good enough to do that.
Right.
And then they have a bad performance in Tucson, and it takes a little bit of a luster heading into the rivalry game. But if you're looking at the two teams, ASU is a team that you're still trying to figure out what in the heck is going on, and they've got a big decision in the offseason, and you like the direction that Arizona's going.
Brad, everybody sum up what you saw out there. By the way, I can't thank everybody else out there enough for hopping on here. On game days, I generally can't sleep, so I've been up for about 14 hours, so I'm tired right now. But, William, hop on there. What do you got?
You know, I think this was so far, and hopefully it's not the last time we say this, but this was Jedd Fisch's marquee win. It was Jayden de Laura's, and he's been very good this year, but it was a shining moment. And you know, the unsung guy, the guy we got to talk about is, I believe it was Savea who blocked the field goal. He's the transfer from UCLA who's been a bit of a disappointment.
Game-changing play.
But he's been a disappointment. So the fact that he was able to haunt his old team, and that was a big turning point in this game. So I'm hoping that carries over to next week, and we can have Jayden de Laura haunt his old team and get his revenge game. But yeah, I thought it was a very good performance on offense. It was a great performance on special teams, and it was a good enough performance on defense. And when they got the pass interference penalty, which was the right call, you kind of felt like, okay, here we go again.
Right.
They're at the 30.
And even at the end, Brad, you know, you look at that last play of the game, missed by what, a foot? And then you want to talk about a heartbreaker for Arizona if that one works against them. That's tough. You feel good. By the way, is that superstar Billy Graham and Tony Schiavone in the bottom left-hand corner there?
I was thinking it was Hogan, but
maybe it is Hulk Hogan. I can't tell which one. I've been meaning to. I know he enjoys popping in from time to time, and I do appreciate who it is. But it's been so small in the thumbnail that I haven't been able to quite tell which fake blonde bald guy it ultimately is. So either one of those two is good. Anyway, nevertheless, I didn't mean to sidestep you there, Brad. My apologies.
No, that was my point is, yeah, it was probably the best across the board effort, at least since San Diego State, and a much better competition. So yeah, this was just a very fun game and a good game for Arizona, and frankly one that was needed, because Arizona again had that ridiculously difficult schedule, and to get a win in that slate I think is very important for the Wildcats.
All right, everybody out there, hundreds and hundreds of comments. You guys are the real stars out there, besides Jacob Franklin, which it goes without saying. But again, hundreds of comments. We've reached 172 on the lives right there. Really appreciate you guys all. John Schuster, you're the man. Brad Alice, you're the man. Thank you for everybody out there that supports the Four Peaks. For everybody out there that supports any of the nonsense that we come up with. Appreciate you all. For everybody out there, again, Schuster, Alice, thanks again, guys.
How dare you? Nonsense?
Oh, I meant nonsense in a complimentary way.
Oh, no, it's total nonsense.
Right. It is nonsense. All right. We will be back with you tomorrow. We got KJ Lewis coming up, and then obviously William will be on in his normal time later on in the week. But as always, you've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.